Hi guys, it's me, Misty. I just wanted to pop in and let's sew a giraffe today. That's what my plans are. This is what the video is going to be about. So if you have any questions, the videos are broke up so that they are in parts. Just watch the parts of the video that you feel like you need. If you're having a hard time in one area or the other, you don't feel like you have to watch all of them. I'll label them so you know what they are, but let's go sew a giraffe. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to talk to you about something that is not on the pattern, and that is the fact that maybe some people want to use minky or some other fabric that is not patterned for their giraffe, which is totally fine. It doesn't have its pre-built in spots, if you would call them. I like doing it with the pattern fabric. It adds the fun fabric shapes on it, make it look like it has spots. But so what if you don't want to use that and you want to use a plain colored fabric? So we just have to make our own spots. So what I was thinking is I would show you two different methods for making your own spots. What you would do is cut out your fabric choice. Look, and I thought of this after I started cutting. It's a little heart, and I'm going to put it on the bum of the giraffe. How fun is that? So what you can do is you have two choices. You can zigzag stitch this on, and what you're going to do is you're going to get your heat and bond, your iron-on interfacing, the double-sided iron-on interfacing, and this is what it looks like if you guys have never seen it before. It's kind of, it is, see, can you see that? It's attached to the paper, but then you iron it on one side and then iron it onto your other fabric. And actually it's easier if you iron it on before you cut out your shape, so remember that. So iron it onto your fabric and then cut out your shape that you want, and then you can iron it onto wherever you want to put it on the giraffe. But then you're going to put it in its place, iron it on, and then you're going to do a zigzag stitch, a tight zigzag stitch all the way around your shape that you want to do for your spots. So that's one option for a zigzag stitch. That doesn't create a lot of bulk, but you will see your stitching. So really, which method you choose really depends on your desired outcome, what you want it to look like at the end. The other option, which I kind of like, I don't love the zigzag, I don't love seeing the thread on the outside. So this is what I plan on doing for mine. Here is a little dot that I already made. I tested it out. So what you do is you get your shape, and I didn't create a pattern for my dots, I just cut them out. This is just me hurrying with the scissors and cutting them out. So think about your placement of your dots and what you want them to look like, what shape you want them to look like. When you are cutting it out from this method, make sure you add 1/4 of an inch seam allowance so that you allow for that. On this one, if you're just zigzagging it on, just cut it out the shape that you want it. You don't have to add a zigzag, or you don't have to add a seam allowance because you're just gonna sew it right on there. Okay, so in this method, you get a thin piece of fabric, and I chose to match my fabrics, but really it doesn't super matter because you're not gonna see this fabric. So I got a thin cotton fabric and I stitched it together. You're gonna stitch it all the way around to make a circle. And when you're done, you're gonna flip it over and you're gonna cut a hole in this fabric. Can you see where I cut this hole? I cut the hole out, and then I turned it right side out. So then you don't have any of the seam allowance. You're not gonna see a zigzag stitch when you do it. Then what you're gonna do is you're going to ladder stitch this on. And the ladder stitch is the stitch that we use when we close up all of our seams that we used to stuff the giraffe with. So there are a little picture tutorial in the pattern if you need to see that for how to do the ladder stitch, but it's easy. So when I do these dots, I would make my dots and I would actually sew them on after I've made the giraffe. I like to do things like that after I make them because then I can see the placement of where they're actually going and what it's going to look like on the finished stuffed animal. If you're going to do the zigzag stitch on this one, you are going to put it on your pattern pieces and stitch them before you add them to, or before you begin to sew the giraffe. So that's one of the first things that you're going to have to do. So those are just some options. You guys are super creative too. I love to see what you guys always come up with because you always come up with things that I would never think of. So I love to see what you come up with. Okay, so we're ready to get started. I have previously cut out all of my pattern pieces. I've made sure to cut them so they are mirrored images of themselves. So for each piece that it's labeled how many you need to cut, we're making sure that each one is mirrored to each other. So I've done all of that. I have also taken the time and marked on my pattern where my dots are and also where the notches are. So for the notches, I just cut a little slit right there. I just don't go far enough in to actually have it go within the seam allowance. I stay within the seam allowance. So make sure when you cut your little slits, it's a good way of marking the pattern, but we just need to make sure that we don't go too far in. So I've got all of my dots marked. I see here's the hoof and I've marked those dots, so I think we are ready to sew.